Hello and welcome to this edition of Central Connecticut Now, the program that brings you closer to the newsmakers in our area and those who cover them. I'm Mike Schroeder, publisher of the New Britain Herald and Bristol Press, and today my guest is Chief Chris Chute. Chris, welcome.
Thank you.
Chief, you've been on leading the force since the first of the year.
That is correct.
And I guess the first question is, any surprises? You know, I know that you've been with the force 22 years?
That is correct.
Okay. So anything that you've seen so far that kind of...
A lot of surprises. Luckily, the previous chief, Chief James Wardwell, trained me. I was his deputy chief, and I worked under him, so he gave me a good idea of what to expect. But just like in any leadership role, when you're running an organization of 155 officers, it's the unexpected is sitting in that chair, knowing that everybody's depending on you. So nobody can prepare you for that. I think when you start off, you have this idea of what it's going to be like, but you really don't understand what it's like until you take control. So.
And this year so far, how is crime in our community in New Britain?
So far, we're at the midpoint of the year, and our overall violent crime is down, and I think our nonviolent crime, our crimes against property, is about holding where it should be. So nothing, no spikes anywhere. Nothing that I would say is of concern. Different populations, different areas of the city that we've had some concerns with. We've addressed resources, and most of those concerns are speeding. A lot of those concerns are, due to accidents, some larcenies, investigations, but for the most part, it's holding steady right now.
And what's going up? What's coming down?
Right now, I have to say, the trend over the last few years would be the stolen cars and the larcenies from MVs. Those have been going up, and the violent crime is coming down. Our drug activity, we have a narcotics unit that is very aggressive, so we're out there combating as best we can with the drug crimes that are occurring, the street sales that are occurring, and there's certain pockets within the city that are a little bit more elevated in activity than others, but we're using a couple-pronged approach at it with our patrol officers addressing the area and saturating certain areas at certain times, as well as using our undercover covert investigations to try to target where the source of those drugs are coming in. So we're doing a couple of different things to combat that.
So there's different techniques that you use in and out to kind of get at the root of the problem.
Definitely. I think it's important because the patrol officers that are out there in uniform and they're in their patrol cars, that sends a deterrent. That shows the community we're out there. They don't necessarily see what's happening behind closed doors with our covert operations. Those are our detectives that are in plain clothes out there. They're the ones that are doing surveillance from undisclosed locations. They're the ones that are using informants and different techniques, and they don't see that. So neither do the bad guys. They don't see that coming either. So we're trying different approaches at combating that level of crime. We're also doing a lot of outreach through the community through kids. We're engaging kids in a bunch of different ways and trying to, show them that, hey, there's more out there than just hanging around the street corner. Come to our PAL program. Come to our after-school programs. We're gonna show that the police officers are human. We want to engage with them. We want them to get them to know us on a first-name basis.
Now, there's a lot of talk just nationwide about targeting and being very, focused on different communities because that's where the crime is. Have you had to deal with that in adjusting how police officers in our community deal with different groups?
That's a great question because it starts with the hiring process. When we're hiring officers, we're always looking to hire officers that will deal well in a diverse community. New Britain is a diverse community. I've lived there my whole life. I understand it. So when we're hiring officers, we want to make sure that they understand how to deal with different languages, different cultures, different backgrounds, different religion. But when we deploy our resources, we have a great tool within the police department. It's called our Crime View tool. So we're able, through our record keeping, determine where our hotspots are, what day, what time. So when we're sending our officers into the neighborhoods, it's not because we're sending them into this area because we think it's a high crime area. We know for a fact that there's an elevated number of activity occurring on this street corner on a Tuesday at 8 o'clock at night. So we start sending our resources to that area. So it doesn't really matter what we think. We're acting out on facts.
Now, does that happen once you do that? Does that shift that focus to a different time and place? Do the bad guys move from place to place, like trying to stay one step ahead of you guys?
Yeah, just like anything else. It's like when you have a balloon and you squeeze some of it, it gets bigger in a different area.
Yeah.
So if we address an area, a hotspot, which we know is active at a certain day and certain time, of course, they're not going to want to be out there when they see us, and they might move or shift or change their hours. Yeah, that does occur, definitely. But again, we have the ability to monitor that in real time and with stats, and not just what we think. Or again, the community is fantastic with us, and they'll tell us. They have no problem telling us, hey, we have a problem on this street corner, and we're going to go investigate and we're going to take their complaint, but we're also going to check it against what the facts are. And a lot of times there's perceived crime, or when it comes to especially motor vehicle violations, perceived speeding, perceived crashes. So we will address all of our community complaints, but we also rely back on our stats, and we're like, all right, we know there's a problem at this intersection at this time. Let's throw some resources at that.
Now, back to, you brought up opioids and basically our drug problems, which are similar to most communities at this point, right? Do we see is there a particular way drugs are moving into the city?
There's several different ways that drugs are moving into the city. And what we do is we have a lot of different techniques, which I can't get into right now, of how we track that. So we have a great idea of how they're coming into the city. We monitor and we intervene, and we will seize those drugs as they're moving in. But when it comes to drugs in the community, we do see heroin, we do see the fentanyl, we do see pills, prescription drug pills that are being sold illegally. We're also seeing, obviously, marijuana is still being sold illegally, and again, that's been
That's kind of a tough one to kind of, between what's legal, what isn't legal, what's going to be illegal.
So with marijuana, it's simple for us, and what we tell our officers and our investigators, if you're selling marijuana illegally, then we're going to target them. It's that simple. So we do have all those issues. Cocaine is still an issue. Crack cocaine is still an issue. So we are targeting what we know and trying to intervene with those sales, make our arrests, make our seizures.
What's the biggest drug problem right now for in our community?
It would be the opioids. It's your heroin. It's your fentanyl.
Yep.
And it's the most dangerous of all the drugs.
Yep.
Hands down. So.
And now, what is your policy within the police force? Do you carry? I know that there are different kinds of anti-overdose methods. Narcan,
Yes. So no, our officers don't carry Narcan. So we don't carry it per se because we're not first responders to medical emergencies. In the city of New Britain, the first responders are New Britain EMS and the fire department. So with New Britain EMS, we have such a fantastic EMS service within the city. They arrive on scene majority of the time at crashes and other things before we get there because they are so good at what they do. So a lot of the times, if there's a medical emergency, they're being sent before us, or most of the times, if there's no criminal aspect, we're not even sent. So our first responders are the EMS in the fire department. So they're doing a fantastic job of getting to those scenes fast.
Well, before we started, we talked a little bit about the New Britain police force.
Okay.
As far as, there's a lot of good things that came from the past, but there's continual recruitment efforts and the things you look for in recruiting those officers, and what they're having to focus on and what their backgrounds need to be here. And is this a place people want to come to serve in the police department?
Yes. Yes, we have a great turnout that apply to become New Britain police officers. We have a great turnout of lateral officers wanting to leave their PDs and come to the New Britain Police Department. We offer a lot. We're a diverse community. You have a lot of experience that you can gain as being a police officer within the city. We have a lot of specialized units, from our SWAT team to our motorcycle unit to we have a youth bureau, we have digital forensics unit. We have a traffic enforcement unit. We have so many different areas that are great for a young officer to want to join our department and really get a ton of experience very fast. We're also busy. So we do a lot of calls for service. So when they graduate the police academy and they hit the streets, they're getting experience fast, much faster than the area police departments that surround New Britain. Our officers are well trained, and they, with the experience they get, it's nothing better than that. But the recruiting part is always, when I say there's a good number that apply to New Britain, that's still down so much from the years past. So for example, back when I got hired in the mid-90s, you would see 2,000 to 4,000 people applying for 10 positions.
Wow.
So that's a huge number. And the cutoff score, especially when I took the test, was a 90 to get in the written test. So today, it's a lot different. We're not seeing those numbers. Those numbers are long gone. So we're seeing, if we're lucky, we might get 100 people applying for 15 positions. Wow. And what we're doing is we're also seeing what we want from our applicants, the people that want to apply. First and foremost, I want the police department to represent the city it serves. So I'm looking for New Britain residents. I think looking and recruiting within the city is the best way for it to represent the city it serves. And we're trying to look for New Britain residents. We're constantly recruiting. We're constantly hiring. We're also reaching out to other communities too to help bring in more people. But I want people who want to be a city cop. That's who we want on our police department. They want to go into the city, get engaged in the community or different communities that make up the city, the different populations, the different cultures, the different religions, the different languages. And it's a very, very difficult task, especially in today's, the generation. We just, at the tail end of the millennial generation, we got Generation Z coming in. We want good, qualified, good people to work for us.
Diversity. How's it look on the police force?
We're pretty good. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but we have a number of African American officers. We probably do not represent the Hispanic community like we should, but we do have a number of Hispanic officers. Our deputy chief is a female Hispanic city born and raised person, so I think we're so proud of her.
Yeah.
Deputy Chief Jeanette Portalatin, she's a role model. She is the highest ranking law enforcement officer in the state that's Hispanic and female. So we're super proud of her. I've worked with her for many years. I'm so proud of that fact. We have a good number of females. We have a lot of females who are supervisors. We have a female lieutenant, a female sergeant, a deputy chief. So we're always trying to diversify as much as we can, but it's not just for the sake of that. We need good quality officers who really want to serve the community of New Britain and who are willing to engage in all of the different activities.
Are you seeing the same issue with with other departments in the region as far as the number of people applying for?
It's a nationwide problem.
Yep.
It's a nationwide problem, and I belong to several different national organizations, and that's the probably on the top one or two things we talk about, it's recruitment. Recruitment is the hardest thing for us today. There's no question about it, and it's just not Connecticut. It's not New Britain. It's not New England. It's from coast to coast.
And what do you mark that to?
I don't know. It's difficult. There's a lot of different theories out there. One of them, the economy is good. People are coming out of college getting good paying jobs. We have a lot of people see what's on the TV and they see what's on the news and they see that the police officers are vilified. And they see that the police officers are always being blamed for everything that's happened in society. So when you look at what the pay rate versus what the perception of police officers are, I think it shies a lot of people away from them, and especially from all the negative publicity that police officers have gotten over the last few years. It's difficult for people to do that. I deal with applicants. I teach at the university level. I talk to my students, and the majority of them want to go into law enforcement, but I ask them, well, where do you want to work? And they say probation, parole. They want that Monday through Friday daytime job, not having to deal with the community or have the stigma, the negative stigma that's attached through the media outlets about police officers. So they're trying to shy away from that, where we want those individuals. We want them to apply. We want them to get engaged.
How do your officers feel about the public? I mean, as far as, do they feel that they're supported by the public, or do they feel a negative kind of feeling from the people they serve?
I'd say the vast majority of the public supports us, and they feel it. And I make it, when I became chief and I took over, I go to the meetings, I go to our trainings, and I tell those officers, they don't realize how well They know, they feel it, but they don't even know how well that the public supports us. I probably have more people calling us to compliment us, and then I get the complaints, as I should. But I get more people calling to say, hey, listen, you guys are doing a great job. We support you. Hey, and listen, there's a problem in my neighborhood. I really need it to stop, but hey, by the way, you guys are doing a great job. And that's good to hear. And our officers, I believe, see that. It's hard when they see, it doesn't have to be even local news, something that happened out in California, something that happened in Texas, something that happened in the Midwest. And whatever news outlet that's out there is vilifying the police officers, that's hard for them to come to work every day. Sometimes they get their head down and they're like, you know what, here we are. But they go out on the street and they have a good interaction with somebody, and they feel better. They feel more confident and they're recharged. But it is difficult to keep their spirits up, but more difficult to recruit the new people into the job.
What do you feel most positive about in your service to the community? Obviously, you've been doing this for a long time, so there are some reasons why you are doing it.
Yeah. Personally, I think, and I think I can speak for a lot of different officers on this, when you are investigating a crime where the victim has been affected and you can help them, and we always say that police officers join the force because they want to help people. But when you really can see a victim and they're crying and they've suffered a loss one way or another, and you can do something for them. Even though you're not going to make things better, you're not going to make things 100% whole for them, but you're there. You can help them in one way or another and treat them with compassion and give them a direction of how to go for closure. And if we can solve the crime and apprehend the individual, and that comes to a successful closure on the criminal end, there's probably no more better satisfaction than that. And I know personally, I know I'm speaking for many officers, personally looking back, those are the things I remember the most. Were those cases where the officer or myself, we went and investigated a case from beginning to end with some successful closure, and knowing that you created some relationship with that victim and you helped them. Because I think everybody can speak they were a victim of a crime one way or another, whether they were 8 years old and they got their bike stolen to they came home from work as an adult and found their house broken into. We all know how that feels, and that changes your life. And you always remember that. So knowing that we can help somebody one way or another, I really think that's what keeps people going. And definitely the interaction with children, I would say too, because when we're dealing especially with middle-aged school kids or high school kids, and if we can have a positive interaction with them and then we meet them 5 years later and they come up and shake our hand, there's no better feeling in the world than that. There really isn't.
Have you dealt with any kids that have actually gone into the police that have gone through elementary school, high school, whatever, and suddenly you're supervising them?
Definitely. Recent people that got hired that we know that came through our PAL program that are officers right now, several other officers that came through our Police Explorer program. Wow. And it's such a great thing to see that. And it's nice to see them, and it's more than anything, they're a New Britain resident, and they have a taste for what the police department and what the police department can do, and they know the community. There's nothing better than an officer knowing the community before he starts on the street. You know how powerful that is. If they go on the street for their first day, and they might know more people than their field training officer does because they grew up in the community and they were a part of it. So that's a great thing to see, and we constantly try to recruit for that.
I know you mentioned earlier that you like to see applicants that live in New Britain, that have grown up here, that, as you say, know the community. Do you see many applicants?
We see not as many as we like. Yeah. I'll tell you that right now. We're not as many. We try our best, and I'm not seeing the numbers that we need. We really need more people to apply. We're there. We're putting ourselves out there. I'd like to see a lot more. And it's again, but it is. Today, it's 2019. I mean, this is where we're at. Trying to just get people to become police officers is difficult. But I would love for 500, 600 people to apply that are from New Britain. It'd be fantastic.
Do you think that what will have to change to get those numbers back up?
I really think that the perception of what police work is needs to change. I know our community supports us, but I still think based on, especially not so much in recent days, but in the past few years, all that negative publicity really put a damper on it. I look back to the 90s when I got hired, and I honestly believe one of the driving factors that had so many people applying for the job was the TV show Cops. When Cops came out in the late 80s and early 90s, people would stay home on a Saturday night, they'd watch Cops and, oh, that's a cool job, I want to do that. Versus in the mid 2000 teens, they were turning on the TV every night and they were seeing an officer in some kind of misconduct or suspected misconduct, and they would see the community going against the police department and the community. And I don't think people want to step into that. In reality, that's not occurring, and it's not occurring at the New Britain Police Department. And that's what our battle in recruitment is. No, we have the support of our community. We have a fantastic mayor that supports us. We have a common council that supports us. We have community organizations, faith-based organizations that support us. And getting that word out to the applicants is key in trying to get those numbers up.
Well, this is your big opportunity to make your pitch. What would you say to somebody who has some interest in law enforcement to get them to apply?
I would say we have a great job with great benefits. We have something that you can't offer in other jobs. We have, you know, they use the term brotherhood, sisterhood, but we're a family. And I preach that to our officers, that we're the New Britain family, New Britain Police family. And that's something that you don't get you're not going to get in an office job. And we're out there serving. We're doing good things. We're doing stuff that's positive for the community. It's an exciting job where you're not going to see the same thing every day. It's a challenging job to where you're constantly being pushed and you're being trained to handle different aspects of what's occurring in society. So I think it's one of those jobs that you're not going to come to work and you're going to be bored. You're going to be challenged and you're going to get pushed and you're going to see sides of life that nobody else gets to see. And I always tell the new recruits, you're on a roller coaster ride that the majority of society is never going to be able to see. Come for the ride. Come for the ride. It's fantastic.
And it also sounds like that most people respect you.
Yes.
And that's a good feeling.
Right. And the problem areas with any community is a very small percentage of people that are repeat offenders. You know, and we deal with the same issues with the same people over and over again, but the vast majority, we go down, if we're working an event or if we're standing on a street corner doing a traffic detail, they'll come up and say thank you for your service. And again, that's a great feeling. And I don't think a lot of people before they apply understand that.
Yep. Do they, you mentioned that you have to deal with the same people over and over. We talked a little bit before we started the tape that a lot of, due to changes in the law, that people are more and more coming for another visit.
Correct.
And there's not much you can do about it.
That is correct.
And part of that is changing the juvenile age.
Yeah, I would say about 4 or 5 years ago when the juvenile laws changed, where a juvenile used to be considered under the age of 16. So it was below 16, 15 and below. And it changed to 18 and below. And a lot of other crimes that were serious crimes that juveniles offenders were arrested for would be transferred to adult court. Since the changes in those laws, we're seeing a lot more of the reoffending of specific juveniles with no consequence that's occurring. And we've been very vocal, law enforcement across the state about these changes. It's nothing new to hear, but we're seeing that specifically. We had the stolen cars that we were going through, rashes of stolen cars, larcenies from motor vehicles, some serious, even serious violent offenses that would typically be transferred to adult courts, maybe are not right now. And what we're seeing is that since they have no consequences, they're getting bolder. So we get a lot of complaints about the ATVs and the motorcycles driving through the streets, and they know we're not going to chase them because it's too dangerous. We're seizing them and we're taking enforcement action against them, but the reoffenders know there's going to be no consequences. Up to the point where they'll tell our officers, there's nothing you can do to me.
So. That must be the hardest thing to hear for your guys.
Definitely. But our officers are fantastic. They are not going to be dissuaded by that. They're going to take with the proper action and what they need to do. They'll pass this information on to the court with an arrest. The court has to live within the guidelines that were set to them. They're going to do what they have to do. But our guys understand that and they keep on moving forward, which I'm very thankful for.
Well, I'll tell you, it's been very good to listen to what's going on now and what's actually going on behind that building that you're in.
Yeah, that's right.
And we really appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll see you again.
Excellent. Thank you.
And thank you for being with us for this edition of Central Connecticut Now. Hope you have a great time until we see you again.